Well. Clemson Tiger fans, college football fans, welcome back to another edition of the Clemson Postgame Live. I am your host, Jordan Bowman. Thank you guys for showing up. We have a really interesting game to talk about, a lot of things to dissect. We're going to try to get to it all. We're going to be running on a little bit of a shorter timetable than normal. So we want to hit everything. But feel free if you want to get your questions read. The super chat is available. Make sure that you subscribe if you haven't already, and hit that like button, because let's run it up and let's get some people in here. But I don't want to waste any further time. I'm going to bring on my co-host Tiger Paul Craven. What's going on, man? Live from the softball fields.
Hey, what's up,
what's
man?
happening, man?
Living the dream out here in the softball field. Took a quick break to come talk to you fine people about Clemson football and that football game we just watched. Definitely pretty interesting. Like some things you saw, maybe didn't like some other things that you saw, but overall, really good win for the Tigers, and the offense is still alive and well for those that were in doubt. Maybe that was me. Maybe it wasn't me. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. But final score, Clemson 59, NC State 35. I kind of want to, start, first and foremost, everybody in the chat's, talking about, the kind of fourth quarter kind of dip in defensive production. Rightfully so. But I do want to spend a lot talking about the positives, because ultimately this was a very positive result for Clemson. Extremely positive result for Clemson. We predicted a lower scoring game. I think we had the exact same score, 35-17.
Yes.
And Clemson had that by the beginning of the second quarter. So, I mean, you always got to put things into perspective, and
Right.
That's what we're going to do. So we'll start with the performance of this offense, man. What did you see? Obviously, Cade Klubnik continues to play extremely well. But what else did you see about this group that makes you encouraged for the rest of the season?
I tell you, Jordan, the thing that stands out to me is something that was missing from this offense for 3 years, and we couldn't find it. It didn't matter how many times we tried. It didn't matter, how many different combinations of receivers we ran out there. The explosive play has officially returned for the Clemson defense, for the Clemson offense. We finally have an offense with the ability to truly truly stretch the field and have a deep threat. And it's not just one receiver; it's multiple receivers, which really gives defense fits. I tell you, one of the stats that stood out for me is 12 consecutive drives, 12 consecutive touchdowns for the Tigers, going back to the first half of the App State game into the first half of this NC State game. So just put that into perspective. Regardless of what you think of NC State's defense, regardless of what you think App State's defense is and App State as a team after they got blown out this week, regardless of what you think, 12 for 12 is impressive regardless of who you're playing. And the big thing for me is we're not only explosive in the passing offense, we're explosive on the runs as well. Phil Maffa breaks another big one today. Cade Klubnik breaks a 55-yarder. I mean, just a design quarterback run. Beautiful, beautiful play, beautiful blocking execution. Hole open right up. He hits it, and he's off to the races. Nobody's catching him. So I'm excited because this offense is finally explosive. It looks easy again. This is an offense that looks reminiscent of the Clemson of old that we think about, that just has the ability to jump on people when they need to. And that's what they've shown in these past two games. Now, let's see if we can keep it going the rest of the year. But the explosive plays is what stands out the most to me, Jordan.
Yeah, absolutely. And Cade just continues to he just looks so comfortable. Like everything that he did looked effortless. Even like some of the throws that he missed, like it was the right decision. He was it was like a rear view it was like a rear view mirror mentality. It was like, okay, that's behind us. That play's behind us. We're gonna go get it the next one. Like that's what the maturity of Cade Klubnik was very, very apparent. The receivers were making plays, and that was with Tyler Brown not being able to go for this game, and Brian Wesco getting injured. A little bit into that second quarter, and they kind of held him the rest of the game. So we'll find out in the press conference kind of what his situation is looking like. But Antonio Williams had another great day. I want to give a special shout out to Adam Randall.
He finally got that touchdown you were talking about.
He finally got that touchdown, and yes, I thought he just played so well in general. It was very encouraging to see a guy that came into the year as a starter and kind of had his role diminished after the poor performance against Georgia. And I'm just happy to see he didn't mail it in. I thought he played well in that second half against App State. So, I wasn't super concerned that he had mailed it in, but today, like, he was able to parlay that effort into catches and his first career touchdown. And it's not even just the plays where he got the ball, man. Like, he was blocking his ass off. If you go back and watch those on the Troy Stellato screen, he literally blocks two guys into each other, like with his effort, and opens up that play for Troy Stellato. And what a hell of a run by Troy too. He shouldered somebody and broke a tackle.
He was not trying to go down, that's for sure.
The offensive personnel that I think Clemson has, it's really started to show. Like, we have some. Not only do we have some guys that can move, they're strong too.
Yeah.
I mean, I already mentioned Adam Randall, but one of his catches, it was a short little stop route. He catches the defender's on his back, and then instead of like trying to turn and kind of shake him off, he just backpedals him for another 5 or 6 yards to get the first down. Like that's the kind of stuff that just what last year we just did not see nearly enough of. And so it was really, really pleasing to see. Just guys giving effort. The screen game was the best it's probably looked in a while. Not just the screen that I mentioned, but just they were well blocked in general. Man, Olsen Pat Henry at tight end continues every time Clemson would break off a run play or a screen. Like he's out there like bullying somebody. Man.
Yeah.
Like on Cade Klubnik's big run, it was Olsen Pat Henry, across the formation that made that block that opened up that lane. So just the first team offense, flawless execution basically in that first half for the second week in a row. That's good to see. The offense looks easy for the first time.
It does.
4 years.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head, Jordan. It looks easy. It looks effortless. They look so comfortable. They look like they just have a complete understanding of both the game plan and what every other player around them is doing. And they're just out there playing free. I mean, you cannot really complain too much about what the production that the two games of production that the first team offense has put on the field. It truly is next to flawless. Nothing is flawless. You can always get better. There's always things that you can coach. Cade didn't make every decision perfectly today. Every ball wasn't thrown perfectly, but you can see the confidence. You can see this offense truly coming together, and those dudes trust each other. And that's a big thing, and that's something that we haven't seen for literally 3 seasons. And the big thing you mentioned, Jordan, is the perimeter blocking. I mean, that stood out massively today, and that's something that we've been yelling about for, it feels like those at least 2 years at this point, because a lot of what Clemson has done in the past and what Garrett Riley likes to do is predicated on perimeter blocking.
Yep.
And we were not very good at it last year. And it looks that these receivers have really bought into it. And it looks to be, through these first 3 games, it looks to be a complete 180 as far as the effort that they're giving forth with that perimeter blocking. And you can see the explosive plays that are being produced because of it. And you mentioned a guy like Olsen Pat, not a guy you would expect to come in and be like this guy that's becoming one of your very consistent blockers at the tight end position. It wasn't his skill set coming in from high school, but it just shows that clearly he's bought into his role that he has on this team right now, and he's executing at a very high level.
Yeah, absolutely. And just again, and one of the things that I've talked about is that the best part about the way the offense has looked the last 2 weeks is you haven't really done anything super complex or like complicated or extremely difficult to execute. It's just guys doing basic football stuff, like just the basic fundamentals. Because again, we've talked about how this roster is still pretty good. Like people, obviously Clemson fans, believe that this team was talented, but from the outside perspective looking in, like there is this idea that Clemson just doesn't have the guys, and the personnel has been there. And now you've coupled it with, an influx of, higher caliber coaching, like Matt Luke on the offensive line, who, man, Matt Luke is going to probably be one of the biggest hires in the Dabo Swinney tenure when it's all said and done. Like top 2 or 3.
Yes.
And when you consider the pedigree that Clemson's had on the offensive line, which is none, you can make an argument that he's not 2 or 3. He's 1. He might be. And that's a spicy take because Brent Venables exists. But
yes,
I don't know, man. Just when Clemson's had defensive guys in the past, before and after Venables, but offensive line wise, like you've never seen Clemson with this level of coaching on that side of at that position. And so now you're seeing this team really start to get together, this offense in particular, really starting to coalesce and gel. And that's one thing that we were, after the Georgia game, it just felt like, oh man, here we go again, another long year. But you're starting to see it now. They took their lumps in that game, and they kind of looked at themselves in the mirror and reevaluated, and they didn't let it tank their season, essentially. And that's a testament to the culture. You saw that last year when you started 4-4. This team wasn't going to just bow out and quit. So I'm just really happy with the 2 performances. People will say, especially with how App State looked the other night, and how NC State has looked throughout the season, that, oh man, you played 2 bad defenses. And you know what? Fine. I'm perfectly fine with saying that Clemson just, has played 2 bad defenses. But the fact that, the progression from last year to this year in terms of how you've looked against bad defenses is night and day. I mean, thing about that Charleston Southern game, I know everybody remembers that. The one where you have a pick, you throw a pick six, you have a fumble that's returned basically to the 5, and you're only up like 21-17 at halftime. Like, those were the kinds of games you were fighting and clawing. You were going for it on 4th down just to keep drives alive against Charleston Southern.
Yeah.
And now you just against 2, FBS opponents and 1 Power 5 opponent, it's looked like the easiest thing. You've been one of the most efficient offenses in the country. So and explosive offenses in the country. So, I mean, Clemson fans that have watched this program for the last 3 seasons know the difference. This is not a product of the competition they're playing.
No.
This team, they've absolutely improved significantly, and we'll see kind of how that progression goes. Now, I've never saw this team as I don't think this team is going to win a national championship. So,
no.
Any non-Clemson fans that are listening, don't get me wrong, but I always felt that the ceiling of this team was a lot higher than maybe some of the preseason prognostications were giving them credit for. So really happy with the first team offensive performance. And the big win. Love beating up on Donut Dave. So
yeah, I think you can. Yeah, love beating up on Donut Dave. Dave Dorn, freaking idiot of a coach. Can't stand Dave Dorn. So glad that he went in there and got embarrassed at Death Valley once again. I hope he never gets that white buffalo, if you will, for him, that feather in the cap of beating Clemson in Death Valley. But it certainly wasn't going to happen tonight. And I think you bring up an interesting point, and it's something of a top of the conversation that's happened this week because of how App State went out there and looked right after they played us, right?
People were dunking on Clemson, man. It was
getting
bad.
their doors blown off.
Yeah.
Now everybody's got rolling jokes on Clemson. Look at Clemson fans. They excited about putting up, 66 or whatever against App State. App State's terrible. Look, they just got blown out again, blah, 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 blah. Hey, at the end of the day, I think, Jordan, you make probably the most important point of it is even in the past 3 seasons when we have played very bad defenses and competition that is well below the roster level that Clemson is, we haven't looked good. Not that we haven't looked how Clemson's looked this season in these past 2 games against App State and NC State. We haven't even looked like a competent offense.
Right.
You remember us against La Tech. You remember us against Charleston Southern. You remember us against all these low-level teams that you're supposed to blow out, and we couldn't even consistently move the ball against them. So to say that Clemson's offense hasn't improved, no, it's absolutely, without a doubt, a night and day difference between this year and the past 3 seasons. Now, how good that is as the competition increases throughout the season, that remains to be seen. But one thing we know, the explosive plays for the Tigers have returned, and this offense is much, much better than it has been in the past 3 seasons. I'm not saying we're back to the level of where we were previously. I don't think we are. I don't think we're competing for a national title. I don't think that's in the cards for this team. But competing for an ACC championship and going to the playoffs and see what happens, absolutely, I think that's in the cards for this team, and that's a realistic goal and a realistic expectation for Clemson fans at this point. We said before the season, cautious optimism on this channel when it came to this Clemson offense. We kept that energy after, the Georgia game. We kept it after the App State game. Now we're into the NC State, and it's just, I think you have to buy in now. Not that we're gonna run off and go win the national title, but you got to believe that this offense has much improved. And this is a Clemson offense that's finally competent, that has the ability to take the top off of a defense and can run the ball really well. So I think it's a well-rounded offense. And the defense, I think the first team defense has been pretty good. We'll get into some of the young players that got played today, and we'll get into some of our thoughts on that kind of stuff. But you got to be really proud about the first team offense and how they've executed for the first 2 weeks. And I think that first team defense although probably hasn't nearly executed at as high of a level as the first team offense, I think they're still executing at a pretty high level.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, you just continue to see like Garrett Riley like finding ways to get his guys the ball and his playmakers the ball. Um, and that's what we've been dying to see. And it's been a lot of fun these last 2 weeks.
It has.
But yeah, on the defensive side of the ball, yeah, I think the first team, they had their moments, and I will preface this for any NC State fans or that are watching. I mean, I don't know why you would be watching. I wouldn't want to watch, this, but CJ Bailey, I think, is going to be a special player when it's all said and done. I thought he played a lot better than he'll probably get credit for. So I do want to say that I think he's a very, very talented football player, and he's going to be a problem once he kind of fills out his frame. I mean, he's still very wiry, but I went into this game thinking he was going to be an upgrade over Grayson McCall, and I think everything I saw confirmed that. Just the throws he was making, all of that. So I do want to preface that. Defensively, I thought the first team mostly played okay. There was a lot of miscommunications in the secondary that needs to get cleaned up. There was just too many guys. I watched them a ton. Like I would see guys motioning to switch when they were in man. Like a guy would motion in, and the response like Avion Terrell or somebody would, or Ashton Hampton on the outside would kind of make a hand signal, and it wasn't acknowledged by the other corner, and then you'd end up like having a free guy wide open. I saw that way too many times. And that's something that I think teams are going to exploit, the communication issues in the secondary. But first team defensive line played well. NC State could not run the ball in that first half at all. And I thought the linebacker play was better. Wade Woodaz did a good job. I mean, you did a good job of containing Casey Concepcion, who, granted was probably not 100%, but a guy they needed to have out on the field. And he's still a danger every time he touches the ball. So they didn't really let him get off all that much. So that was good to see. Yeah, happy with the first team defense. Not a whole lot to talk about there. Shout out to TJ Parker for finally showing up. That one guy that we were kind of waiting to see kind of make a big impact play. And I still think, I was just happy with that. And I thought the edge play, at least in the first half, was better than I was expecting, not having Peter Woods. So all in all, front seven, I thought played fine. Secondary, there were some bad lapses. I think it's all fixable stuff, but there were just too many guys getting getting free releases and guys not communicating back there, and that needs to get better. And it was really on the corners, not necessarily the safeties so much. So that's got to get better. What did you see? Oh, he's probably preoccupied. I think you're muted. Okay. All right. And while he's figuring that out, I'm gonna let's see what you guys are kind of talking about in the chat. Yeah, he's probably gonna come back. Anything on the offense? Tiggs mentions the tackling. Yeah, honestly, I thought the tackling wasn't necessarily the problem. It was just guys. There were a couple of missed tackles on the back end, but I think the biggest thing was just pre-snap guys not being where they need to be, or being on the same page as far as assignments and responsibilities. But that was just on the naked eye. Like when I go back and watch, like I'll look closer. But yeah, that's definitely got to get better too. see. Guys, people talking about Stellato. Yeah, he had a couple of moments where he was fired up, but I think he was just. I mean, that's him being a competitor. Um, so, and it was good to see him get more opportunities throwing the ball, catching the ball, because I mean, he probably played better than he's played better this year than his stats will show, and that's kind of probably the frustrating part. But I didn't see it as anything other than just him being competitive and wanting the football, like any good receiver is. But TPC, welcome back. I was just I was
Thank you.
asking kind of when I was kind of giving my rundown on what I thought about the defense. I hit on some of the positives. What did you see uh, that you didn't like? What did you see that you did like? And with the first team, we'll talk about the backups in a second.
Okay. First team. I think the front seven played pretty well today. AJ Hoffler caught my eye a few times. I think he
Yeah, he
played
flashed a
really
bit.
well in place of Peter Woods, who did not play today. And just seeing him opposite TJ Parker. TJ Parker finally flashed today for me. He was in there making plays, causing turnovers, all sorts of stuff. So I think the defensive ends really, really played a stand-up game today and really played well. Some of the just allowing the quarterback to get out of the pocket sometimes and pick up some yardage that way, I think was but I really saw that going in with CJ Bailey. He was able to kind of pick up yardage when they needed it at times, and I thought he would be able to do that because of just his athleticism and his ability to kind of escape the pocket. I figured that would happen, but overall I think the first team defense played really well. Kept them in check for the most parts. North Carolina State kind of had a few moments here and there where they were able to move the ball on that first team defense, but for the most part, we really did shut them down as far as the offense goes. The NC State offense, they couldn't really do very much consistently, and although they had a couple moments where they were able to move the ball, in the end, Clemson's defense bowed up, made them kick that field goal. They missed it. So I think for the most part, you got to be pretty happy with the defense. Still cleaning up some tackling stuff, I think, but much better day from the ends, I think, in just showing their presence on the field and that being felt by the opposing quarterback. They were kind of living in that backfield for a good portion of the day. They were really giving that offensive line fits, ticking off that left tackle from North Carolina State, getting him
Belton.
rotated. What's that?
Yeah, Belton, the one that spit.
Yeah, the one that
Yeah.
spit got himself in trouble. But overall, I think it was pretty positive for the first team defense. And AJ Hoffler, I think, is the guy that flashed for me the most today, which is really encouraging because we've talked about kind of the depth of that defensive end group and, really the lack of depth that we have in that defensive end group outside of TJ Parker and Peter Woods. Obviously, Peter Woods not able to go today. And I think AJ Hoffler made the most of his opportunities. You felt his presence on the field. He looked fast. He looked confident out there. TJ Parker made his presence felt as well. So overall, I think the defensive ends really flashed for me today on the defense.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that's pretty good summary of I think there are definitely still some things that need to be cleaned up. I mean, clearly, this defense, I think personnel wise, especially in your starting 11, still really, really good. But they have there's still certainly a growth period that I think they're going through as well. And the great thing is they're allowed to do that now because you have an offense that can score. So I think that's the exciting thing, moving forward. Let me see. Anything else? Special teams was pretty good today.
Yeah, it was fine. nothing really of note there. So, which is
yeah, I mean,
usually good.
Nolan Hoosier made his field goals.
There you go. Yeah.
And Robert Gunn touchback on every. I think he was a touchback on every kickoff, so that was
every
good.
kick. They didn't return any of the kickoffs.
Yeah.
Nolan Hoosier's still 100% on the season. So you got to be happy with that.
Yeah. And then I thought the return game was good too.
Antonio Williams, broke that really nice return at the almost at the end of the first half to kind of give Clemson a chance to punch it in. They didn't end up punching it in, but Nolan Hoosier goes ahead and puts 3 on the board, and we go to the half with 45 points. So,
hey, and while you weren't able to punch it in on that drive, I mean, Cade showed a lot of poise and growth from last season. Throwing the ball out at the back of the end zone on that third down,
instead of trying to force something and getting a catastrophic turnover deep in the red zone, which is what he would have done last season. What he would have done last season was exactly what you're pointing out. He would have forced the ball into the end zone somewhere and possibly got an interception, and then that took 3 points off the board, right? Or last year, what it really would have been was a pick 6 and a 100-yard return the other way. That's what it would have been last year, because we were putting all sorts of catastrophic turnovers on display last season. But it does show Cade's growth. What it also shows is, if you remember North Carolina State's drive before, Clemson started calling timeouts.
Yeah.
Right? With like a minute to go in the half. That shows that this coaching staff really does believe in that first team offense and their ability. They wanted to give them a chance to go down and score again. And although they didn't seal the deal, they did get that field goal on the board. And, to your point, Cade made a really good decision by, hey, everybody's covered up. Let's go ahead and throw it out of the back of the end zone. Let's let Nolan get a chance to put 3 on the board, and that's exactly what happened. So I like the aggressiveness from the coaching staff there at the end of the half. And then obviously Cade's decision-making in the red zone, recognizing what the game was, and that you still had a field goal if you didn't have a throw open. So I think that's a huge positive, and it shows growth.
Yep, absolutely. I think that covers about all the positives that I really wanted to hit on.
Yeah.
We're trying to get through this quickly, but I do want to take a quick break before we dive into the second team, and let's kind of get a word from our sponsor real quick.
College football is even more exciting with some action on the line, and the games are even better when you're cashing in. And the Voice of College Football is the place to be to get the greatest value. Let's start with my picks. 75% against the money line, 58% against the spread. I've got a 40-year track record. In fact, in 2023, at $100 played per game, you would have netted over $9,300. And guess what? I'm just the warm-up act. Steve Merrill, our ace in the hole, show stopper from Wager Talk. 6 years with the Voice of College Football, over 30 years in the industry. Steve gives us analysis on all the big games, but you can't miss Steve's weekly under-the-radar pick, which went 21-5 against the spread the last 2 seasons. I repeat, 21-5 against the spread. You also get picks from some of our top analysts here at the Voice of College Football, including Steve Dace and Matt Zemek. Become a YouTube channel member or Patreon member for just $99 per month. Go to the main channel on YouTube, click join, and select the betting tier. Do the same thing on Patreon. Make 2024 a winner now.
All right. I do want to kind of transition, talk about that second half, and really that fourth quarter, and just kind of we don't have to spend a whole lot of time on it, but clearly, the defensive backups and third stringers, and you got a lot of your walk-ons in. Obviously you want to see them finish a lot better. That was some of those plays were kind of disappointing. In that second and in those series, like NC State was running the ball at will. They were kind of getting whatever they wanted. Just kind of a lack of effort and kind of want to from that from those second and third string guys. And so like I think, to put all of that in perspective, because there were a lot of people complaining that about that at the beginning of the show. I really am not, particularly, concerned about that. Feels good that, you can get those guys opportunities in the game. It's kind of how I felt about the App State game and some of the plays they gave up in that second half. I mean, this is a product of the last 3 years. You're playing in fourth quarter games basically all season because you're not taking care of business with your first team. So you haven't been able to develop the depth like Clemson used to do back, during the playoff era, the playoff years, because and so now you're having to get a lot of these guys opportunities that they haven't been able to get in years past. And you have a lot of young guys and a lot of young players. So I thought the good thing is the coaches were, they kept up that same intensity throughout the entire game.
Yep.
Nick Eason, after I don't remember which particular touchdown, one of NC State's touchdown drives it was, but you could see Nick Eason on the sideline absolutely ripping into everybody, not just the defensive line, but everybody. So I think that's encouraging.
Yes.
And so, obviously you got to get better there, because it wasn't just all backups. There were a couple of starters in that made a couple of mistakes. Jaden Lucas, you're in phase. Why are you grabbing and getting a PI? Like,
what are you doing, man? What are you doing?
You're a third year player. Can't do that. And that was it's like, what are you grabbing for? You're in phase. It was good technique.
You're fine.
You turn around and get your head around. So why are you bear hugging the guy?
He was exactly where he needed to be.
Right.
There was no reason to grab him, hold him, cause any sort of a PI. You were in perfect position to make a play on the ball. Just turn around. But
Yeah. So just stuff like that needs to get better. And you had some walk-ons. I mean, you had a lot of walk-ons in. You had a couple of the line and they were getting NC State's offensive line was getting pushed, but NC State had some of their backups in too. So you can't that excuse. So they absolutely need to play better. But the good thing is, and we were talking about it before the show, like that's going to be great teach tape for these guys. In practice. So love that. We're complaining about the defense in a game that we scored 59 points and not a game that you were fighting tooth and nail to win. So
you gotta love that for sure. From the fans' perspective, it's a tough pill to swallow, right? Seeing that 35 burger up on the board when if you watch the game, you know how lopsided this game was. It was never in doubt. NC State wasn't close from the jump. It was clear that Clemson was going to physically dominate this game and dominate it on the scoreboard, which is exactly what they did. But from a fan's perspective, you hate to see that 35 points on the board.
Yeah.
You hate to see 21 points get put on your defense's head, regardless of who was in the game in the fourth quarter. With that said, this is an amazing problem to have because we haven't, last year, the year before, we weren't able to put in backups. We weren't able to develop young players with real game experience because we were constantly fighting tooth and nail to win games. So although the fan in me doesn't like to see that 35, if you truly understand what that 35 means and what that's going to mean for development of the depth and the young players on this roster, it's really it's okay, right?
Yeah.
You don't like to see it, but it's okay. And it's going to pay huge dividends later this season, next season, when you have to rely on some of these young guys, whether it's due to injury or whatever the case may be, right? You may have to rely on some of these young guys later this season, definitely next season, because certain parts of your roster are going to turn over, whether it be the NFL or the transfer portal, right? So being able to get guys like that real game time experience and then allow them to go out there and make the mistakes is great. Now, there were some effort a lack of effort plays there, and I think that's where you saw a guy like Nick Eason and some of the other coaching staff really laying into them, because it felt like in that fourth quarter there was a lack of intensity on the Clemson sideline, right? You can't allow that to creep in, right? The game was not over. Although there was no possible way NC State was going to put up enough points to win the game, that doesn't matter. You have to finish the game, right? You can't just chalk it up to, oh, we're already up so much, the game's pretty much over. You have to continue that intensity, and I like to see that hard coaching on the sideline. That's what you expect out of a guy in Nick Eason, and you love to see it. And you love to see those young guys being held to the same standard as those first teamers, right? Because the standard is the standard, right? If you're out there and you got that orange helmet on with that white pall on the side of it, there's a certain level of expectation when you're out there on that Clemson defense, right? And they clearly did not hold up in the fourth quarter. But to your point, Jordan, that's going to be amazing tape for the coaches to use in practice and develop these young players and show them and teach some of our guys that weren't necessarily depth pieces, hey, look at this effort that you gave on this play, especially that last touchdown, right? To me, that was like a lack of effort touchdown. That should have never happened. The defense kind of gave up and just let them run into the end zone. And you just can't let that kind of stuff happen. But the coaches, I think, will do plenty to clean that up. You got to feel great. It's 59-35. Clemson absolutely dominated the game. And for the second week in a row, you were able to clear the benches and really get some depth pieces valuable game time experience. And that cannot be replaced. And that's something Clemson has not been able to do in quite some time. So although it's tough to see 35 points, enjoy it, because we got to empty our benches today against a Power 5 conference foe. Yeah. That's a big deal.
Very big deal.
Regardless, that's a big deal.
And again, you and I both, we love that it was against Dave Doran and NC State.
So. Absolutely. Couldn't have been against anybody any better.
Yeah.
Hey, somebody go check on North Carolina, by the way. I don't think they're okay.
Yeah. How was that? Like, how I checked the score and it was
it was in the 60s.
Yeah, they were down by 19. Yeah, and it was in the 60s. Oh,
it was in the 60s. Yeah.
I'm checking out some other scores. Coastal is getting whooped by Virginia. Shout out to Tony Elliott, about to start 3-1. Good for him. Rutgers is up on Virginia Tech. That's notable because they're on your schedule. Pitt is dominating Youngstown State. Notre Dame is in a dogfight with Miami of Ohio. They're not on your schedule, but that just is worth noting.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. James Madison ended up winning 70-50. That's insane.
That's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't expect that result, but it was UNC was probably the most fraudulent 3-0 team in the country. They were clearly not good, and really in any of their games, even against who did they play last week? Was it A&T?
Yeah.
It was like a 17-10 ball game for a lot of it. Was it A&T or Central? I can't remember. It was one of the North Carolina HBCUs. I can't remember. It was not a good game, and they kind of broke it open late. Yeah, but I think that kind of covers all of that. Kind of all of our thoughts.
Yeah.
I know you have to go, and we're hitting that 45-minute mark.
Yes, sir.
So I'll spend the last. You can drop out now, and I'll spend the last 10 or 15 minutes talking to the chat.
All right, sounds good, man. Hey, I appreciate it, Jordan. Thanks for holding it down and running the show for me today. Really do appreciate it. Everybody out there in the comment section, thank you guys so much for showing up. Really do appreciate each and every one of you. Don't forget, Super Chat feature is available. So if you want Jordan to read and respond to your comment and guarantee that happens, go ahead and hit that Super Chat feature. If you're in the live chat right now and you have not already, please hit that like button for us and consider subscribing. Me and Jordan do the All In Show every Wednesday at 8 p.m. We also do live post-game reactions to every Clemson game. So I'll see you guys on Wednesday, 8 p.m. Don't be late. Jordan, you have a good one, brother. I'll see you and talk to you later.
See you later, my man. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Tiger Paw Craven, ladies and gentlemen. All right. let's see what you guys are talking about in the chat. I want to spend a few minutes with y'all, see what your thoughts are on this victory. Again, love beating NC State and Dave Dorn. So, people talking about the AP poll, yeah, I mean, it's not really worth talking about. I think Clemson did enough. I think it'll reflect somewhat in the AP poll next week. Obviously, the fourth quarter obviously is going to make that look a little bit differently. But Clemson, they were 18.5-point favorite, and they won by 24. And the score was not even that close. I mean, obviously, the game itself wasn't that close. So, people they'll make their decisions, and they'll write off kind of this result because they did it with App State. But all Clemson can do is keep on winning football games. And with how the schedule is looking right now, you have a chance to win a lot, and you'll be favored in every game the rest of the way, more than likely. John says, hopefully Jordan Young was impressed today. Yes, Jordan Young was in the Valley today. Obviously, that's been a recruitment that's kind of been up and down. And, for a long time, felt like Clemson was the presumed favorite, and then NC State kind of made a push. I think today did a lot. I'll say that much. Bama has also entered the picture, so we'll see how that works. But I think it's a good thing right now. Jordan Young, I believe, is going to delay his commitment to November. So, he was initially planning on making a decision in October, I believe. So now he's kind of reevaluated and he's going to push his commitment back to November. I think that's a good sign for Clemson. But Bama, like I said, Bama has also entered the picture and has been pushing hard for him. So we'll kind of see how that plays out. But I think today would have probably did a good bit. He got to see the Valley rocking. I thought the crowd was tremendous. The atmosphere especially for a noon kickoff was pretty awesome. And they certainly showed what Death Valley is at its best, other than like a night game. So that was good. I've been really pleased with the home crowd these past two games. So hope they keep it up. Jay says something has been off about the defense all year, in my opinion. They're really good, but something's been missing. Yeah, I mean, I think in every game there's just been things you can point to, whether it's been the second level of the defense, or the linebackers, or the secondary. In all three of your games, they've just had really bad moments and lapses. And I think that's something that when you have a talented defense, but with a lot of guys stepping into new roles, like that's kind of to be expected. So just it really is about you seeing if they get corrected, because obviously today and Georgia obviously got to expose you in that second half. It happens. And App State and NC State have certainly in those games they had moments as well. So definitely you'll be able to evaluate how much this defense has grown and whether things are being fixed kind of as we get deeper into the year. But yeah, clearly there's still some gelling that needs to be done. It's guys like it kind of similar to kind of what the offense was, not to as severe a degree last year, where it was just a couple of guys just not doing what they're supposed to do, and you give up a big play, or you don't fit the run correctly, and so that's stuff that has to get fixed. Porsche Pal says, win the league, don't let it come down to an opinion. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean that ultimately that's what this comes down to. I mean, Clemson absolutely should be the presumed favorite or co-favorite to win the conference, and there does not appear to, Louisville has looked pretty good. I think they just took the lead on Georgia Tech. That looks like your toughest game in conference. So and you get them at home, a team you have not lost to since they've been in the conference. And you don't play Miami, you don't play Syracuse. although that's probably not as daunting of a game as it would have been, considering their loss last night. But still, Syracuse, it was a good game, and Syracuse certainly has been playing well, surprisingly well this year. But you don't play them, and so and they're a team that typically gives you fits for whatever reason. So yeah, I mean, you can't really ask for a better schedule to shake out. Like the expectation should be to be in Charlotte and meet up with whoever, whether it is Miami or not. I'm not totally convinced that they're far and away, the best team, and I think their warts will show soon. But till then, that they're kind of the presumed favorite right now. Yeah, John says Mac Brown probably going to join the ACC network next year. He's better at that now. Yeah, UNC, man. Really, the state of North Carolina today, this week has been brutal. Between NC State, North Carolina, App State. I think Duke is winning, so that's good. It's not well. They're up 14-10 on Middle Tennessee, so not overly impressive, but it's better than what their rivals have done this week. Dylan says OSU was a 40-point favorite over Marshall, but they didn't cover. Yeah, that game was kind of interesting for like a quarter. Then OSU realize that they're Ohio State. Joseph G says, would you say Cade is the number one ACC quarterback? Number one? I mean, but it's probably a hard conversation to place Cade exactly because, I think I saw some rankings. Somebody from the ACC network, I don't remember who it was, dropped like a ACC quarterback ranking, and Cade wasn't even in the top 8. I was like, okay, well, they're probably like, there were a lot of people upset about that, but I was like, okay, well, he's had one really good game this year. And, it's probably fair to not overreact too much. But after today, I mean, he's played like, through 3 games, he's played like a top 2 or 3 quarterback in the ACC right now. So, might not be number one, but you also have to think if Clemson hadn't played Georgia week 1, we might be having a different conversation. So that's a real thing too. But I think absolutely, I think Cade is one of the, based on what we've seen through 3 games, has been one of the top 2 or 3 quarterbacks in the ACC, and I think he's still got a lot of room to move up because if he keeps playing like this, yeah, that argument will be there. Tiggs asks, will we see DJU on the field versus Clemson? I mean, it's not looking promising. We'll see. They play Cal tonight. You probably want Florida State to win that game. If you want to see DJ out there in 2 weeks, Florida State winning a game with him under center would probably help that. But the prospects aren't looking too good right now. Let's see. Carefree cash flow says whoop that trick. Yeah, absolutely. John says, yeah, I need to see Cam Ward versus a solid defense first. Cade needs more testing that way too. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Cam Ward has certainly gotten the benefit of the doubt because he has not played, a really good team yet. And so he hasn't really had a chance to get exposed. Florida is not good. Although they played well against Mississippi State, but Mississippi State also might be the worst team in the SEC. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not totally sold that Cam Ward is going to be like this for, play like this against everybody for the rest of the year. But he has looked really good. So I'll give him, and he came in as one of the top quarterbacks in the ACC. So he's going to get the benefit of the doubt. And that's just kind of how it works. John says Barrett Carter is off this year too. Yeah, I mean, I thought he had some better moments today, but still he had another bad missed tackle. Yeah, he just has not played well really in 3 games, super well. It's it's been very underwhelming. That's the reality. He's got to. I mean, it's just, and I don't think it's like he's in the right. It's not like him being in the wrong spot. He's just not finishing tackles, kind of playing soft. And trying to shoulder tackle and stuff like that. Like, buddy, you still, I mean, you just because you're a preseason, first team All ACC linebacker, like that doesn't mean that you guys are just going to lay down when you run up to them. Like, you still got to make the tackles, bro. So yeah, he's definitely got to play better. All right, let's do a couple more. Realistic One says, yeah, that's right. Win the ACC and you're in. This is a good team. This is a good team, but not a great team. I'm assuming he means not a great team. I don't think anyone argues that. Keep recruiting and see what happens. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think the good thing, this team has a lot of room to grow. Again, we talked about the defensive miscues, and clearly this team is not super duper deep in multiple spots, and so. You need guys to stay healthy. I mean, Colin Sadler going out was not great because you didn't have him. I mean, the first team offensive line played phenomenal, and they've played really great all season. Even against Georgia, I thought they played well. But clearly, you don't really have much in terms of depth. Colin Sadler is clearly that guy. Then maybe Trent Howard. You saw Elijah Thurman in there playing at tackle. Because Colin Sadler wasn't playing, and he's going to be a good piece to have for you. He's exceeded expectations as a true freshman, but still, like he's not starter caliber, I would say yet. He's going to be there, I think, pretty soon. But he still has, he's still a true freshman, so it's like ideally you don't want him to have to play in a big spot. So, yeah. Backup offensive line still has a long way to go, and we saw that. When Vizina was dropping back, he didn't have a whole lot of time to do much of anything. And it seemed like NC State knew that because they were just sending guys because they were like, okay, they're not gonna protect and pass their assignments off very well, and they didn't. Which, that's where we are. And I don't know why. I saw some people kind of surprised. I was like, well, we kind of knew that going into the season that like we felt good about the starting 5, minus center, and Ryan Linthicum has come in and filled that role nicely. But we were very worried about the depth behind those guys, and I still am. So you need those guys to stay healthy for sure. Yeah, David Wood mentions the Ashton Hampton pick 6. That was good to see. And guys going down and blocking, perfect execution. I mean, I've been really impressed with Ashton. I've always been impressed with Ashton Hampton, but he's going to be a big piece for you. As we get deeper into the season. I think some guys, have not, especially since some of your older guys have not, played as well in certain spots, but. Ashton Hampton, absolutely. He's going to be a dude for you. I mean, the PI was kind of a tough call a little bit, but I understood why they threw it. But I thought he got there on time, but I didn't go back and watch the replay. So I could be wrong on that. But pick 6 was cool to see. Absolutely. He's going to be a really good player for you down the road. Tater King says, yeah, I'm glad we aren't happy with the 24-point win. Reminds me of the good old days. Yeah, this was definitely more reminiscent of, 2015 to 2020 than anything we've seen. So that's good. And, I think that's also something that, we have to put into perspective is that even during those years, you had games like this. I mean, everybody remembers South Carolina putting up 35 on you and a bunch of yards. That wasn't great. You had performed. NC State had scored 30 on you. What was that, 2017? That was the Kelly Bryant year. You've had moments like where you've given up points. ACC championship game against North Carolina, your defense could. I mean, they played well in the first half, but as the game got tight, the offense played well, but then they kind of put you in some bad spots, and the defense didn't always play well, and ended up coming down to an onside kick at the end. There have been moments even in the Brent Venables era where the defense they didn't have great performances. So and that was the first team guys that weren't playing well. So I think the good thing is what you saw. A lot of the bad you saw today was mostly from the young guys and the backups. Continue. Yeah, the Clemson secondary needs to step up and be better when we get to teams that can push the ball downfield and make plays like Miami or Louisville. Yeah, absolutely. Communication has to be better. I think the technique stuff and like the PIs, like that's kind of there's kind of the learning curve that they all go through. I think that'll get straightened out, but really just the communication errors was really disappointing. Like that's got to get better. Because if you're going to if guys are just going to scheme wide open, you got to make the offense work for guys to get open. Like it can't be guys not, understanding their assignment or not switching when they're supposed to, not being in the right, like that kind of stuff, the pre-snap stuff that you have to have straightened out in order to be a successful secondary, like that's got to get better. So with that, I think that's going to do it, y'all. I've been on for about an hour. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. This game was exceeded my expectations in a lot of ways. I think we have a lot to build on, and I think it's official. This offense is a lot better. And I think this team has they have the ability, and they've shown it through 3 weeks to, win out the rest of their schedule and potentially be in that playoff. Good win over a rival. The Textile Bowl trophy is back in Clemson, South Carolina, where it belongs. And I couldn't be any happier. And I think that's what Clemson fans should take away from this game. Not in, we can talk about some of the nitpicky stuff and the stuff we didn't like, later on. And I will certainly be doing that with my co-host Tiger Paul Craven on the All In Show on Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. So y'all make sure you come and check it out. If any of you guys are new listeners, we do that show every Wednesday. So come tune in and come hang out, because we'll kind of give our final thoughts on this game and a more in-depth look after we've rewatched it. And we'll be there to break it down with y'all. And it's a good time. But until then, I'm Jordan Bowman. I will see you guys on the next one. Go Tigers.